Quiet on the set. This is a very unique experience. We are now on our live stream through YouTube right now, and I'd like to welcome you all here tonight. In a way, this is our very first hybrid event. What I'd like to do is tell you a little bit about the this is a hybrid experiment. And by hybrid, we mean we have the audience right here in front of me. I'm in the Mallon Planetarium. Mallon Planetarium is located at Arcola Intermediate School. We're in Valley Village Park. So for those of you who don't know it, we're in a little town called Fairview Village. We're streaming live from here, so we have a live audience. In our audience, we have some Rittenhouse members, and we have some members from Arcadia University. We have a science class who's attending us from there also. We're going to have a Zoom guest tonight. What we're going to do is we're going to bring back one of our alumni who graduated from this program, Shaun Peiffer. Shaun is in commercial management of the International Space Station, and he's going to be zooming in our guest speaker tonight, Dr. Ken Sabin. He's coming to us from Illinois, and they're going to be talking about production in space. We also have a Zoom audience of members who are with us. I'd like to say hello to everybody there looking at on our Zoom feed. If you wanted to be in our Zoom feed, you would have to be a member of Rittenhouse Astronomical Society or one of the college groups. Arcadia's in the house. They also have tickets to be with us on Zoom. And we're going to do something tonight a little bit different. We're going to bring some amazing resources together.
And the resources that we're going to bring together for everybody is something I want to make you all aware of, and all of you right here in the audience too need to know this also. When I left Methacton School District, I got involved with Muddy Run Observatory. Muddy Run Observatory has been recently renamed as the Ryan Observatory, and we're going to try a little bit of a live stream from them. One of the dreams that we've had in these planetarium facilities, and I share this one and Shaun shares it with me, is imagine that we could stream in talent from anywhere. It was actually the late 1980s when I got my first experience right here in this facility with live streaming. Methacton School District was very strong in their STEM support, and they approached me and said, would you like to have a NASA astronaut or engineers talk to our students? I jumped on that bandwagon, and within a couple months, I was able to witness 60 students here, all with their rocket bottles, and we were talking to NASA live, and they were evaluating some of the designs that they had made. That was very popular. It happened right here first in the Methacton School District, right here in this planetarium. Within the next month, I think it was in the same budget cycle, we had put a cart together and started putting it out into the classrooms. And that was the original justification we used to put video feeds into every classroom here. It wasn't to play movies like people think. It was actually to bring talent from different areas of the globe into the classroom. So tonight we get to do a little bit of that also. Before we begin with Muddy Run, what I want to do is I'm going to switch projectors here a second.
And you might want to go up and mute that one.
Gotcha.
Okay, can everyone still hear me? Give me a thumbs up, Denise, or somebody in the background if I'm coming through. I believe I am.
I can hear you.
Okay, thank you. So the next thing that everyone needs to know here is, why Rittenhouse? What does Rittenhouse Astronomical Society have to do with this planetarium? Well, what's kind of interesting is, although we're guests here tonight, what I'd like to do is share something with you that very few people are kind of aware of in this area. This school is in a very unique location. And the reason it's in a unique location is we are actually located very near where David Rittenhouse did some of the most amazing science work that we know of. So let me share a little bit of a map here just to get you guys started. And come on. Oh, okay, let's see. No, we want recents here. Days, months, okay, all photos. Here we go, got it. You're looking at a map right now live of where we are. I don't know if our audience can see that. And if you look at where our coal is at, we're down in the bottom left-hand quarter here. So
we're not seeing it.
Okay, not seeing it. Give me a chance. Help me out, Denise. Are we seeing it now?
We're seeing it now.
Okay. All right, so that's the map we're talking about. If you look at where we're at, if you were to travel just 4 miles from this facility, I could say maybe 9 minutes without traffic, probably a half hour with traffic. People locally know about that. There are 2 pikes located between us and David Rittenhouse's farm estate. Where you see that little dropped pin is where David Rittenhouse was a local clockmaker. David Rittenhouse had a dream, and that dream was he wanted to be able to figure out how to make a scientific instrument that would be so accurate that it would be able to demonstrate the phases of the moon, the positions of the planets. He wanted to be able to turn this machine forward and backward in time to be able to predict when eclipses were happening and other astronomical events. So you've probably driven up and down the pike, and if you've driven by fast, you see the sign Rittenhouse Farm. But very few people in this neighborhood know that this was the site of one of the most amazing things that ever happened in American history, and it's what got us worldwide acclaim. On that site was a house. It's the David Rittenhouse home, and it's here that he lived out his life before he moved to Philadelphia, and it's here that he built his own observatory. What's kind of interesting about it is the house still exists today. You know this as a rehabilitation center, and it's a small hospital. And when I was working here at Methacton School District, I went over to find a little bit about David's history. And what was interesting at the time, you're looking at a map from down from the top, there was a rock that was sitting there, and it was behind the building, right underneath where you see the word medical. There was a rock back there that has a plaque on it that says this is the original site of David Rittenhouse's original observatory. And I looked at the rock and I looked at the site and thought, this can't be because it's a bit of a valley. It would be better up on the hill that was nearby. I found an original caretaker who was actually there when it transferred over and became a rehab center. And he said, oh no, the rock was actually in front of the building. It was right here. But if you guys remember a game that came about, Pokemon, some decade back, so many people were driving into the hospital to get their Pokemon points that they had to actually move the commemorative rock. Pokemon apparently lived right on the rock. So they moved it to the back of the building, and I said, where was it originally? And he was the one who told me it was on this hillside, right behind those new housing complex, and we estimate the spot was right about there. This would have been clear cut at that time because this was all farmland, and we estimate that that would be the spot where David Rittenhouse made worldwide acclaim. He was able to accurately predict and also track the transit of Venus going across the surface of the sun. This is amazing for their day and time because this distance, once known, would even enable us to figure out the true dimensions of the solar system. So in a way, this is a very historic area, and it's really not that far from the school right here. So I'm back here again because I think there's a natural interest in coming out to this area. And in the future, I'd like to actually bring some more members out to the Rittenhouse estate and get them a little bit more idea of what was going on there too. So that's why I'm so interested in building a bridge with Methacton School District. Think about it, everybody. This is David Rittenhouse's dream. This is the ultimate orrery. This is the ultimate planetarium that can go backward and forward in time and actually been able to predict and enjoy these type of events that are here. So that's kind of the setting that we're all in tonight. And we have a couple special events kind of lined up for you tonight also. And one of those special events is going to be a nearby observatory. So the Ryan Observatory is online with us right now. I think I see them out there somewhere. And what I'd like to do is see if I can't connect with them. And we're going to try something that we haven't tried in the past. What we'd like to do is see if we can get an image from our telescope through that observatory. So I'm looking around for them right now. Let me see if I can find them still here. There they are. Okay. And I think I have to tag them as the speaker. Nope. Hold on, guys. I want to make sure I can get you on a couple different screens. And again, everybody, we're not pros at this. We try it the best we can. View, gallery, nope, view, speaker. Okay, and how about turn your mics on out there for me and start talking a bit.
Hi, everybody.
So this is Dawn and Bernie. Dawn has actually been trained by myself and also Al Ryan, and Bernie, he's an operator at the telescope also. So they're out at Muddy Run live with us right now. And we're going to do something a little bit later on with the moon. So I was wondering, do you guys have any view lined up that you can share with us?
We sure do.
Want to give it a try?
We went.
Okay, do we have permission to share screen, Ted?
Try again.
I'm seeing it.
We see it too. We're there. So
This is the Terminator on the moon. Because it's so close to being full, it's very, very skinny. Friday morning, the 19th, there is going to be a lunar eclipse starting about 1 a.m. in our particular area. And the moon is going to turn a bright red when it gets into the Earth's shadow.
So if you guys mute yourselves for a minute, I'm going to talk from this end. So ladies and gentlemen, they're actually doing something that I asked a little bit earlier. When I said to them, we have a picture of the moon, I said, can you get the Terminator? And they said, you're crazy, Ted. It's almost full moon. What you all need to know is that when we look at the moon as astronomers, one of the neatest sights is the Terminator line right about there. And that's how we can determine where we see quite a lot of detail at. But because we're near a full moon, we don't really get much of a Terminator to look at. That shouldn't deter you from looking at the moon, even on a full night, because on full nights, one feature of the moon stands out much more than others. These very large areas you see are the maria of the moon. Don't mistake them for craters. They are not. You can't really see craters with the human eye. The craters are actually these little white circles that you see here on the lunar surface. And one thing that you can observe on the moon, which is kind of fun for people, is lunar rays. Lunar rays are these long lines that you see across the moon, and some can be seen visual with the eye, but most of them can be picked up with binoculars on a good clear night. And when the moon is full, the sunlight is actually bouncing down almost on top of these rays. What the rays are ejecta, or material that's been thrown out of that crater after a rock or something were to hit it. I believe they're between Copernicus and crater and Tycho crater, and these actually have some of the most rays that are visible for us. So if you're a novice and you hear some astronomers saying, you don't want to look at the moon when it's full, please avail yourself. It's one of the most beautiful objects in our sky. Look at it while it's full and enjoy some of the lunar rays that are up there also. Well, hey, thank you guys. We have a lot to do here tonight, and we just wanted to test this out. I'd like to give you a quick round of applause because that's the very first time we were able to get a picture from our observatory anywhere. Now, it'll get better as time goes on, everybody, and they're really just practicing from their end also. But hey, that was a really good attempt. So, Dawn, my hat's off to you. Thank you. I know you're nervous out there doing all that. Normally, everybody, I'm at their end, and I'm doing this from their side. So this is the first I'm at the opposite end. But thanks, guys, for doing that for us. Is Al there in the background? Tell him thanks a lot for supporting the effort here. No? Okay. Well, he'll be there somewhere. Okay. Take care. And I'm going to come up to the front mic now. Can I do that, Shaun? Okay.
Very interesting, everybody. It's so hard to be, on this and there. But I'm going to try to do both because I've got a very special event lined up for us tonight. And the event that I wanted to share with you are the two gentlemen that are sitting on either side of me. This journey started quite a long time ago. Both Adam Chantry and Shaun Peiffer, and we've been going down memory lane since we got here. They started their journey on the floor right here next to me. They were both in kindergarten or first grade. and we sat around a small fake campfire here in the front of the planetarium. And we started an amazing course that they would attend that would go all through their middle school years and even into sporadic visits into their high school years. So I know these gentlemen for a very long time. It's a very interesting scenario to see two children who used to hold my hand that were knee high that are now leading me in science education. So tonight's the night of the story, we could say the Prodigal Son Returns. Not only was Adam really impressed by the planetarium and it shaped his future of where he wanted to go, but Shaun Peiffer, it had shaped his future also. Shaun went through a quite circuitous route to get to this point, but he wound up as a commercial manager for the International Space Station. So we could say, thanks to Methacton School District and their investment in STEM and science education, we're now at the point that we can take graduates that came through this program and have them bring their scientific colleagues back with us and share some information with us. So I'd like to introduce to you our host tonight, who will be interviewing our guest speaker. The host is Shaun Peiffer, and the guest speaker will be coming into us from Indiana, and his name is Dr. Ken Sabin. So Shaun, if you want to switch spots with me, and you got to wait till I walk away so that we're distanced properly.
Well, hello everyone. I'm Shaun Peiffer. Ted, thank you for having me here this evening. So this is it's been 30 years since the last time I walked into this room. And one of the first senses that came back to me and fond memories was the very unique smell in this planetarium. I was quite taken back by that, and it really took me back to when I was a kid here in this planetarium. And so, so a little bit about myself. I graduated from Methacton High School in 2001, and shortly thereafter, I went into the Marine Corps, where I served 8 years. And then left the Marines, moved to Washington, D.C., where I pursued my education there full time, and went to work for the Justice Department. I thought I had my life figured out at that point. I think I was probably around 32, 30, around that age. But I was unhappy, and I was like, well, I need to have a major course correction here. And so it took a lot of nights and a lot of thought going into, well, where do I want to go? What do I want to do with my life? And right before I went to sleep one night, I just kind of had this, felt like somebody was out there talking to me and said to me, hey, go back to your childhood passions. And my childhood passion growing up was everything space. And one of the many memories I had was here in this planetarium with Ted Williams. And so I shortly thereafter, I made that correction and applied to several jobs in aerospace. I ended up with a job out in Las Vegas, Nevada, working for a commercial space company out there called Bigelow Aerospace. And so they produce space habitat systems that you can live and work out in. They actually have one attached to the ISS that the astronauts use as a storage closet. And so I was out there for about 1.5 years working in business development for these space habitat systems, talking to potential customers and nation governments that were interested in starting their own space programs in these habitats. And so I got a call from the International Space Station, Iss National Laboratory, otherwise known as CASIS, which is the Center for Advancement of Scientific Studies in Space. And so they had a business development position open out there, and I ended up out there in Melbourne, Florida, and that's where I'm at right now, about 30 minutes south of Kennedy Space Center. So the International Space Station, for our audience out there that is not familiar with the International Space Station, International Space Station is about the size of a football field. It's located 250 miles above Earth in a pretty high orbit. It orbits Earth about every 90 minutes. And so the International Space Station took 10 years to build. And we have countries from all over the world that have visited the space station and have built the space station. And so the US portion of the space station is a national laboratory. And so in 2010, Congress directed NASA through the NASA Authorization Act to open the US portion of the space station to academia, companies that were interested in sending their research and development up to the space station. And so they needed an organization to manage the US portion. And that's where CASIS comes into play. And that is the organization I work for. We are not NASA. We are a non-for-profit. But we manage the U.S. portion of that of the space station. And so all of the research and development that goes up there, from food and beverage to fiber optics to advanced materials to biotech, I'm usually the very first guy that you will meet. I meet with Fortune 100, 500 companies, government agencies, academia that are literally on the edge of technology development. And so a lot of the technology that we get up there to the space station, we do it because it's in a state of microgravity. Microgravity is otherwise known as being weightlessness. And so we can't replicate that here on Earth. And so when you take anything from cellular cultures to fiber optic wire up to the space station, microgravity has just a really unique and fascinating effect on whatever you take up there. And so, yeah, I've been out there for about 2 years now, working for the ISS. And without further ado, I want to introduce a colleague of mine, Dr. Ken Sabin. He's the director of in-space manufacturing and production. And so in-space manufacturing and production, really in a nutshell, we've been doing all this really awesome fundamental science up on the ISS for the last 10 years. And so now we're trying to move beyond that fundamental science and taking everything we learned from that fundamental science and now actually trying to industrialize that or actually make these products in low Earth orbit to be used by us here on Earth. And so that is, of course, goes into the whole concept of what you maybe have heard of is commercializing LEO and generating that economy, that new economy up there. So without further ado, I'm going to Ken, yep, awesome. So Ken, welcome. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Thanks, Shaun. Oh, and thanks, Ted, and the organizers for having me. So as Shaun pointed out, I work for the National Lab now. I'm on the science team, and I'm going to say a little bit about how I got to this point. My story, just like Shaun's, is interesting and circuitous, and but there's some commonalities in our journey to this point. I'm also going to say a little bit about the the National Lab and its focus, and I'll kind of explain how some things don't change, and you'll see that in the talk. I'll talk a little bit about STEM education and our commitment to that, and my personal commitment to that, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about the future. And that part I think is extremely interesting and exciting for all of us. So, and if you get anything from this, from what Shaun and I are talking about, is that it's no longer a few people at NASA that get to participate in our nation's experience and efforts in space. Normal people are doing this. Normal people are part of this. So first, I, like Shaun, was inspired from a very young age to think about things in space. And I'm from San Diego, and San Diego, we had two really special facilities. One is the Reuben H. Fleet Space Theater, which is our planetarium, and I would go to all the new viewings. My mom would take me to all those. And we're also down the road from the Palomar Observatory, which is a very large reflector telescope, which is up on the top of a mountain down there. When it was built, Southern California was kind of desolate. It's not the same anymore, so it's lost some of its benefit. But from that experience, I got excited about space. I used to send letters to the guys at JPL to send me pictures during the Voyager and Viking programs, to date myself. And I really got into it, and I never lost that. I was always excited about doing things in space. And it kind of culminated one day when I was at work. I went on to get a degree in chemistry, got a PhD in chemistry, and did a postdoc, and went to work for a big pharmaceutical company. And about 15 years into my career at this pharmaceutical company, I got a phone call from a woman who actually worked for CASIS. And she was calling me up saying, "Hey, we got your name and your number, and we'd like to know if you would like to do science in space." And of course, I wanted to. And so I asked a couple of my buddies if they would be interested. And I remember I'd set up a meeting there were like 7 of my friends and I were going to get together and talk about what we would do, what science we would do. So a week later, I go into that room, I open the door and walk in, and there's like 35 people in this room. There's so many people that people had to stand on the walls, on the sides of the room. And I looked around, and first I wasn't sure it was the right room, because who are all these people? But I saw one of my friends in there, Barry, and I went up to Barry and said, "Hey, Barry, who are all these people?" He says, "I don't know. All I know is I've been living for this all my life." And he actually had a NASA sticker on the front of his computer, which I thought was great. So anyway, we ended up ultimately designing 5 separate experiments that were all flown on the space station. 2 were crystal growing experiments, and I'll talk a little bit about growing crystals in space and why there's a benefit to that. 1 was a study looking at an experimental pharmaceutical that allows your body to build muscle mass without having to work out. And this is an important feature. The NASA people were very interested because astronauts tend to waste away because there's no resistance from gravity. They're in microgravity in orbit. So this would be a way for them to stay physically strong, and on a long journey, for example, to Mars, that will be important. We also ran an experiment looking at how solids that float on Earth dissolve. And when you remove that, because things don't necessarily float in space, there's no, everything's a jumble when you mix a solid and a liquid. So we wanted to see what the difference was, what the effect was. And then the last experiment was a study of freeze drying pharmaceuticals. And we really looked at the agents we use to formulate the drugs, these pharmaceutical agents. And when you make a big batch of this material on the ground and you freeze dry it, so it's in water, suspended, you mix it around, you then freeze it, and then you pump off the water, and the water never goes into the liquid phase. It goes right from a solid to a gas and is pulled off. But when you do that on the ground, it tends to layer out. If you cut it out, it would look like a cake, a layered cake. And that's a problem, because in pharmaceutical industry, we want everything to be uniform. You want the first scoop and the last scoop to be the same as all the scoops in between. And if it's layered and you look at it, some of it is crystalline, some of it's a powder. So we wanted to see if that was an effective gravity. Since it's layering, it most likely is. And that was the hypothesis. We wanted to see, hey, is there an effect? And could we then use that to solve that problem in the long term? So we ran the experiments. The lyophilization experiment, unfortunately, failed because of an operational issue. It's been rerun, and I've not seen the results. That happened in June or July. But the other experiments ran and worked, and we got very interesting results from all that. When I retired from Lilly, I thought about, well, what would I want to go do? I wasn't done with my career. I wanted to go do something else. And the people at CASIS called me up and said, hey, would you like to come work with us and find other people like you in industry to come do experiments with us? And I jumped at the chance. I joined as a scientist, but I actually worked in the business development group that Shaun is in as well. And did that for a while and then moved back over into science. And that's really where I've been focusing my efforts. And we see a wide variety of science coming to the lab and being done on station. Now, one experiment I want to talk about is something that very similar to something Ted talked about, which was Rittenhouse's drive to make very precise instruments. In his case, he was trying to follow a planet's motion in its orbit. There's actually a device on station right now called the Cold Atom Lab. And the Cold Atom Lab was originally a thought experiment that an Indian mathematician named Bose had. And Bose was a very smart dude. He said, well, if I'm Indian, people aren't going to listen to me. This is back in the late 40s, early 50s. But if I send a note to Albert Einstein and explain it to him and he gets it, then people will jump on board. So he did. Einstein understood exactly what he was talking about. And the whole concept was that if you take atoms, like a little vapor cloud of atoms, and you cool them down to very close to absolute zero, that the atoms will stop acting like matter and will start acting like a wave of energy. And a lot of people had tried that. Only recently were we successful in accomplishing that. But the problem you have is when you make this little puffy cloud and you cool it down, it all starts to sink down. Gravity pulls it down to the ground. So they have a device on station, the Cold Atom Lab, and they can make these little vapor clouds and they last a lot longer and they can do interesting science. Now, the interesting ultimate use, or one of the ultimate uses of this, is that that wave that they generate is very sensitive, and they will ultimately be able to sense changes in the Earth's crust, denoting a potential earthquake that happens, and they can sense that before the earthquake occurs. So that you could actually sense earthquakes because of the changes in the gravitational force on the Earth through this type of device. So anyway, some things we're still trying to make very exacting, very precise instruments. For the LEO commercialization effort, one of the things that I've focused on and I mentioned earlier is crystal production. So it turns out that when you try to grow, as a chemist, when you try to grow crystals in a lab, the crystals get to a certain size and then they fall to the bottom of the container. They essentially take themselves out of solution, and that's because they're getting to a point where they're no longer suspended and gravity pulls them down. Well, again, gravity, there's no gravity to pull them out. So crystals tend to be larger when you grow them in space. They also tend to be more refined and more perfect, if you will. And that's a result of the fact that a lot of the other factors that influence the shape of a crystal, gravity is one of them, but gravity has other effects. Heat rises on the ground, that's an effect of gravity, that's convection. But on the space station, because they're in microgravity, heat doesn't rise. So a fire doesn't look the same. A fire looks like a little blue ball in space, not a blue ball with a yellow and orange and the different colors. So when you grow a crystal, there's a lot of turbulence caused by heat and heat transfer and changes in the thermals. And that is all removed. So all you have is pure diffusion growing these crystals. Now, one of the other things that people have noticed is that the crystals all tend to look the same. That's important. A lot of times when you grow crystals, they don't necessarily look the same when you grow them on the ground. But in space, in microgravity, they tend to look the same. and a researcher that we work with at Merck. That's a major pharmaceutical company on the East Coast. He noticed that, and he was a formulator. I worked in the formulations group, but he's also a crystallographer. And he said, hey, if just as I'd mentioned before, there's a drive in the pharmaceutical industry to shoot for uniformity. You want the first and last scoop and every scoop in between to be the same. Well, that goes for the shape and size of the crystals. And he took a product that they sell. It's a commercial product called Keytruda, grew crystals of it on the ground as a control, then grew them in space. And instead of getting a mixture that they see on the ground, in space, they make a single uniform crystal. In fact, the images are so spectacular that I had to call him up and ask him. I said, are these real? He said he could not believe it. That is a real commercial product of something will ultimately have commercial benefit. There are not only in the manufacturing, and the cost of manufacturing can be impacted by this type of technology, but you can also change the customer's experience and even cut the cost of delivery. It's a infused product that you have to go to a clinic and have an IV bag hooked up. This may allow you to do it much faster, and maybe even just go to a CVS and have it done in a few minutes. So, and that would cut the cost of the product as well. So there's some real benefits there. We have projects ongoing in things like the creation of fiber optic cable for improved communications. It will most likely be for things like instruments for short runs, but we have a number of projects in that area. We even have projects in, we call it regenerative medicine and bioengineering or tissue regenerative medicine. And this is an area of huge promise. With the breakthroughs in CRISPR technology and stem cell technology, we're able to take advantage of that. And some of my favorites in that area have to do with organoids, which are small groupings of cells that act as mini organs. So you could make like a mini brain or a mini liver, and then you can run tests on these things. And two things that are almost scary as to how lifelike, how real they are. The brain organoids that I've seen, two things I noticed. One was they actually have brain waves. They don't have brain waves like people. They tend to be very rudimentary and redundant. You know, it's happening again and again. And but the other thing was when they showed the first images of the organoids grown in space, I noticed that they had little tethers with black dots on them, and I said, "Oh, it must have like a fungus or something." And they said, "No. The first organs that grow off your nerve stem after your brain is developed are your eyes. They were growing eyes. That's how true to life these things are." And what this will allow us to do is ultimately replace animal models and get much more accurate models for the human condition in developing products that will be therapies in the future. So I'm going to shift gears a little bit and just talk for a few minutes about our STEM education program and our commitment to STEM education. The National Lab has a strong commitment to STEM education. It's one of our key goals. And we do have a STEM education group, and they do functions and sort of stay current. They also produce materials for schools. And if you're interested, you can contact us and we can talk about what we could do for you. But beyond that, individuals like Shaun and myself do outreach programs. And leading up to COVID, right before COVID, I was probably doing 4 to 5 schools a year. I would go out and mostly K through 6, I would say, K through 5, somewhere like that. A few high schools every once in a while. But we talk about not only what is happening in space, but what opportunities there are for young people. So this is a key piece is Shaun and I, we're old guys. We're not going to go to Mars, but our kids will, right? And I think it's a significant thing to just even look at the young people, like my son, who is a junior in college right now. He has never known a world where we did not have people in space. As long as he's been alive, we've had people in orbit. And now, just like I described to you, I'm involved in the program that Shaun and I are working for the Iss National Lab. We do work with NASA. I have weekly meetings with NASA. It has been democratized. And part of fulfilling that dream is getting our young people to commit to that. So we have, I've had a number of interns. My intern from last year is working for a TechShot, a little company that does hardware development. My intern from two interns from the year before that one works at Lockheed Martin, and the other works for a think tank in DC that focuses on space-related technologies and political endeavor. So all of these things I think are important. And I think that go just beyond that, I think we have a responsibility to younger people to encourage them to do these things. As part of my commitment, I was a scoutmaster. I'm still assistant scoutmaster for my troop, and our troop focuses on nature and the environment. In fact, our last outing, which was last weekend, we got snowed on, was to look at the sandhill cranes in central Indiana near Tippecanoe River. So I think that's an important piece of what we do, and the lab is committed to that. And I would encourage you to reach out to us. And we do things just like what we're doing here as well. So the future. So I want to say, I told you that I thought this was the exciting part, and I'm going to get to it right now. So something has happened, and I would say it was probably happening before I got really engaged with CASIS, but in the last, I would say, 4 years, it has accelerated significantly, even during COVID. And one of the things I noticed was companies are starting to make, investment groups are starting to make very large investments in the space community. And one way you can see that is there's a company called Redwire, it's an investment firm, and they have started buying up all these little technology companies that deliver hardware to NASA. So I think they own 8 companies now, and will probably continue to buy more. You also have people like Elon Musk and Richard Branson and Jeff Bezos committing a lot of time, effort, and money to developing programs to get us into space and to deliver material to the space station and for other efforts. There's also, I've seen a number of these companies. So Redwire, the company that bought these other companies, Blue Origin, that's Jeff Bezos's company, Sierra Systems, they build a small scale space shuttle type of flyer, a glider that brings payloads back to the Earth. And Boeing have all teamed up. I think it's Boeing. They've all teamed up, and they are going to build a commercial space station called the Orbital Reef. So all of this is happening now. So I would say that this is akin to the gold rush of the 1840s. And it's hard for us to see it because we're in the midst of it. Just as people at the time were trying to understand what was happening in the late 1840s and early 1850s. For us, it's hard to see, but I think there is something like that. You have people who are spending more and more money to get people into space, just as there were a lot of shippers and what have you getting people to California. There are people who are making money, lots of money off of selling hardware that is made on the ground and sent into space. All these hardware companies like TechShot and Space Tango and NanoRacks are all these little companies, and then Redwire buying, a number of them. I think the one thing that we're missing is the gold, that people had to drive to go to California. But things like that example that I described with Keytruda, this product that Merck has made and the improvement to it, that product makes probably a $15 billion a year revenue, which is spectacular, and they may be able to extend it or improve that ultimately, the profit they make on that, and drop the prices to customers through this technology. That is what the modern day gold will look like. So I'm really excited about this. I hope you have seen and heard what I feel about this, and I'd love to answer any questions you may have. And if you want, you can always reach out to myself or Shaun, I'm sure, if you want to know more.
Thanks so much, Ken. Before we open this up to the audience for Q&A, I wanted to mention, in addition to Ken's comments on folks that are out there interested in a career in space, you might think to yourself, do I need to have a STEM background? I don't have a STEM background. And when I was making that course correction and applying to aerospace companies, yeah, I was pretty discouraged from even doing that because I didn't have a STEM background. I had some sort of relevant experience, but it wasn't enough to perhaps, get my foot through the door. But I did. And so what I'm seeing a lot more folks that are joining NASA, joining space technology companies out there that do not have a STEM background. So, and that goes for the kids that are out there in our audience, but not only you guys, but for our younger professionals that are in this audience today that are maybe thinking, hey, things aren't working out for me, and I want to be part of this next gold rush that we call, the true final frontier space. So without further ado, I'll open this up for Q&A. For those that are joining us from Zoom, I would appreciate if you just keep yourself muted until you're called on to ask your question. So, okay.
If you have questions out there in our Zoom audience, you can also use the hand key, put your hand up, and we can do a question there.
You're muted, Ted.
For those of you who have questions, you can put them on the chat room. We'll try to take them from there if you'd like. And I have a question to start off with, Ken. One of the things that really intrigued me was fiber optic production. The reason it intrigues me, though, is are you thinking of very small fibers, or how would you produce long fiber optics in space?
That is a great question. I think the way they're looking at it is they're going to be making short lengths of cable, and they're going to be used for instrumentation, not for like telecommunications. And the fiber optics that they're using, the reason there's a benefit to doing it in space is they're using non-silicon based glass. So these are essentially heavy metals and fluoride, and the different atoms that make up this glass, because they have significant differences in atomic mass, the heavy atoms on Earth tend to sink down to the bottom. And that has two detrimental effects. One is you end up getting an inconsistent mixture through the fiber from top to bottom, depending on how it was pulled. The other problem is as the material falls through, it leaves a little trail, and you can see little bubbles and imperfections. So by doing this in space, and they've actually seen visually, they get much better results. I have to say they're very early in the process, and there's some technical challenges associated with making fiber optics, which they're still trying to overcome. But I think that's the dream, is they will be able to deliver very short lengths that have very specific and solve challenges for instrumentation that right now we're unable to overcome.
Any questions from our audience here? Sure.
So somebody said that they're planning on going to Mars. So I'm going to say a little something about that, just real quick. It seems exciting and fun to be, you see the movies, The Red Planet or Mission to Mars, but I'll tell you, it's going to be a really tough journey for whoever does that.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very, very difficult challenge from a standpoint of how we protect ourselves on the way there, how we bring enough material, water. So all that technology is being developed, how we're going to do it. And the space station is the platform upon which we test all this technology. The real challenge isn't when you're at Mars. The real challenge is getting there. And it's hard to understand, but you could not bring enough water with you. You have to recycle the water. And right now on the space station, they recycle the water, but it's only about 85% effective. So if you start with 100 gallons, after you've drank all your coffee and peed into the tube, you only get 85 gallons back. And then when you go through another cycle, you're only getting 70 gallons. So it keeps on going like that. And they have to be closer to even better than 95% in doing that, just to be able to get there and back and have enough water. So all that technology is being tested on station, and that's another reason to have the space station up there.
Thanks, Ken. We have a question from the audience.
Hi, my name's Kim Small, and I'm here representing from Arcadia University. I teach a astronomy class, so a few of my students are in the audience and many are on Zoom. I also teach at Arcadia a science and pop culture seminar, and a few of my students are also in that. And actually, we just did a whole thing on the Martian, so that was great little note to make there. So my one question for my students is, I don't know what their future careers are, whether they're going to go into STEM-related careers, but I know with this generation, what type of outreach do you have on social media where they can follow the developments that you have going on, that they can do as a hobby?
So yeah, there's a lot of different ways to get engaged in the social media scene and what's happening in space. So NASA has its own social media effort, and although it tends to be much more dry, they're trying to engage people in exactly what is happening and how it impacts their lives, or our nation's security or what have you. So that's one side. The National Lab has its own social media feeds, and we tend to be more on the education side, and also kind of highlighting things that we think are interesting. So we kind of filter out all the stuff that NASA's doing, that we're doing, say, here are some of the highlights and things you should know. Those would be the places that I would go to see what's happening. I think those are the most open and interesting of the feeds on the social media side.
I want to add just real quick too. There is a app that you can only get through folks that have the iPhone out there, unfortunately. It's called Clubhouse. And so we have a lot of space professionals like myself that get on there. And essentially it's an open forum. You feel free to get on there and ask us any pressing questions that are on your mind, and whether it has to do with space careers or technology in space. That's a really good platform to become involved with. We have another question. Well, another question from.
So I'm actually reading this from a question on the Zoom from Frankie S. So this is what they wrote. I am coming to the space industry from the boring old accounting world. Where and who knows of are great internships, apprenticeships available?
Okay, so two parts. One is the boring old accounting world. There's one interesting thing I've noticed about NASA, which is they don't think about finances in the way that people who have been in industry, in the commercial world, think about it, right? They get a budget and they work to that budget every year. They need people who are accountants, who understand how money moves, and how to account for what you're paying for and what you're going to get out of it, and the value of things. That's what an accountant, they need accountants. So I'm going to put that out there. There's real opportunity there. Finding your way into NASA or into the National Lab, you can contact myself or Shaun. You can look and see if there's jobs, but we at the National Lab won't have that type of job. You really have to find somebody at NASA who is going to have some type of need for an accountant who's going to understand finances or something like that, or go work for one of these companies that delivers hardware to NASA and be an accountant for them. Then you're part of the mission, whether it be Redwire or NanoRacks or all these others.
and additionally to Ken's comments, there's this wonderful program that was initiated under the Obama administration called the Pathways Program. And this is for students that are currently going through college or had graduated within the last 2 years. Every federal agency has their own Pathways program. NASA has their Pathways program. And so you essentially apply through a Pathways internship. You'll work for NASA at typically at a GS level 5. So it's an actual paid internship. And you'll do that for several years. And then at the end of your appointment, you will have the chance to be converted to a full-time permanent employee. I speak highly of the Pathways program because I came through the Justice Department under the Pathways program, and I highly recommend looking into that route. So we have another question. Yes.
All right, I promise this is my last question. So as I stated, I teach at Arcadia, but I also, similar to what Ted did and I've been doing for 20 years, I run a planetarium for a school district not too far away from here. That's my day job. And I know there was some talk maybe about 5 years ago of your organization actually connecting with planetariums through things like live feed of astronauts from the International Space Station. And then I think COVID happened and there's been no more talk about it. So I'm just putting it out there, and maybe I'll touch base with both of you after offline about ways we can get planetariums who really need some support from people like you to stay open, because they've been closing, very quickly around here with technology changes and not wanting to upgrade. And so I think there's a really good partnership that could happen. And so I just want to throw it out there that I don't know if you have heard of anything like that or would be interested in those types of partnerships with informal and formal science education institutes.
Yep. So that is something that I think we can work through, and we can talk about what that would look like. It's really tough to do live feeds from station. Those are usually done because they're so technically challenging for very specific, if the president wants to talk to somebody on station or there's some big event. But there are other ways to connect with the astronauts, even when they're on station. And they do book readings. That's one of the things that the astronauts will do, is they'll find books that are focused, they're children's books, but they're focused on space, and then they'll read those. And I'm sure there's other things they could talk about that would be of interest and would encourage young people to stay engaged.
Yeah, and in addition, there's a program that I manage in partnership with NASA called the Destination Station program. And before the pandemic, this was a program where it was purely outreach, where we're visiting cities all over the United States with an astronaut. And we're talking about all the cool science and technology that's going on up on the space station, what NASA is doing from a space exploration standpoint. And then we have a trailer that comes with us. It has an actual moon rock and just has a really awesome presentation that you can go inside the trailer and watch and partake in. So we're getting back to doing Destination Station. We've been doing it virtually during the pandemic. We have a Destination Station coming up February 2nd with astronaut Victor Glover. That has not been announced yet, so I'm announcing it right now, but has not publicly been announced yet. But we're looking at getting back into actually traveling across the country again. And so I'm planning possibly Washington, D.C. in September of 2022. So if you're in the D.C. area, I'd love for you to come down and join us. And my mom's in the audience here tonight. I was even mentioning to her, I was like, I'd like to come up here to King of Prussia area. There's a lot of neat and very interesting research into biotech throughout this area. So You can check out Destination Station. Just Google NASA Destination Station, and it'll direct you to their webpage. Do we have any other questions?
Would you guys like to finish with a fun question?
Sure.
This is coming from our Zoom audience. Any good books that you could recommend or interesting novels that might encourage us to go on in space science?
So I'm going to give, I got four of them that I would recommend. So the first is Buzz Aldrin and his son Andy have written a couple of books on Mars missions. Buzz has always been really pushing for us to go to Mars. He's the one who told Obama, look, we've been to the moon, we've done that, it's time to go to Mars. So I would look at some of those, and they talk about some of the technical challenges and how to overcome them. I think that's great. Earlier, there was talk of The Martian. Andy Weir's book, The Martian, which is a great book. And if you've seen the movie, I would recommend the book. It is still a great book. And I would also recommend two other books by Andy Weir. I should be getting a cut somehow from this, but he's a book called The Hail Mary Project. The title will just say Hail Mary, but I think the official title is The Hail Mary Project. And then the last one, the one that came out after The Martian, is called Artemis. And that's the talks about our mission to the moon. And the nice thing about Andy's books are, although he does take some literary freedom to make them a little more artistic and exciting, for the most part, they're technically accurate. And they're interesting. You can get a feel for not only how NASA operates and how they think about things, which is important. Understanding the culture and philosophy of NASA, I think, is key. But it also talks about humanity and what his books, although they are technical and about us going to Mars, they're really about people. And that is a key element to what is happening for us. And as we move forward and take these next big steps off our little planet out into space, that we need to consider that it's really about who we are as a people, as humans, and what we're going to do with our situation and our technology. And I think it's an exciting time to be in the space community and to be a person in the United States of America.
Thank you so much, Ken, and thank you to the wonderful questions from the audience this evening.
Thanks.
Well, hang with us, everybody. What we're going to do next is something we normally do at a Rittenhouse event. We have a couple of specialists in our group, and one likes to talk about the planets. And normally, Denise would do for us a planet report. But I think there's something special coming up that she might want to talk to also. Mistress of the Universe, Denise, are you there?
Yes, I am. Thank you. Thanks, Ken. That was interesting. I can't stop thinking about that little brain with eyeballs. So, yeah, that's going to run around in my brain, but it's fascinating. I just can see so many potential opportunities for stuff worked on in space that can help us. They've been doing it since they started going to space. So not surprising that it's the wave of the future. Well, hi, everybody. Once again, it's me, Denise. And
Denise, can I stop for 1 second? Ted or whomever is host, can we spotlight Denise? We're not seeing her on the feed. I think that worked.
That's okay. I'm going to share my screen anyway, so you're probably not.
Okay. Just want to make sure we see it.
Thanks. All right. So anyway, yeah, there is something interesting going on in the sky. In fact, there's a few things interesting going on in the sky. So real quick, I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to use, first I'm going to go with Sky Safari. So yeah, you can all see my wonderful picture of Jupiter there. I just love it. And speaking of Jupiter, Jupiter is up in the sky right now. So if I use current time and we can see the moon's up there. Venus has set already, but Venus is up as soon as the sun goes down. Saturn, Jupiter, Neptune, Uranus, all the highlights you can see out there right after sunset. There's a meteor shower last night and tonight are the peaks. Moon's been pretty bright. So if you're not under really dark skies, not knowing how much you can see, maybe a couple Leonids an hour if you get up 3 o'clock in the morning or so. But you never know. So keep trying. Tomorrow night would be the good night to try because the moon is going to fall under the Earth's shadow, and we are going to actually have a partial lunar eclipse. Now, I was going to just show you a boring old picture, but I found a website, and hopefully you can still see my screen. It's called timeanddate.com. And I usually use this for a lot of astronomy stuff. So maybe some of you already know about this. And it's got a really good visualization of what's going to happen with the moon and the time. So if we start live eclipse. Oh, I just had it. You know what? Of course it worked earlier. And now it's not going to work again. Stop. I apologize. Let me just hit play. Maybe not live. Maybe that's what I'm doing wrong. Operator error. Okay, so here we go. There we go. So we can see when the moon is going to fall into the Earth's shadow, but it's the outer part of the shadow. And that is happening, starts at 1:30. Then by the time we go into the actual deeper part of the Earth's shadow and the moon will start getting that coppery color, isn't going to be till later in the evening. So I would suggest if you only have a few minutes to go out right before 4 o'clock, maybe 3:30, stay out for an hour, 3:30 to 4:30. It sounds cold, but it's probably going to be worth it. So once again, if you want to see this video, you can go to timeanddate.com, and not only this eclipse, but it'll give you all the eclipses for years. So you can probably look up ones in the past and ones in the future. I just want to show one more part of it. That's when the moon will set by then. But if we go back here, you can also run it without the shadow lines, and that's a pretty cool visual as well. So once again, 3:30 to 4:30, I would say best time, because you're not going to notice the beginning of the shadow. But once we're in the full shadow of the Earth, then that's when we'll see that beautiful coppery color. So that's going to be about 4:03 is the maximum. You might even see a sliver of the white part of the moon, which is sunlight reflected on the moon, because we're not in a full total eclipse. And then in the morning, I do believe you can see Mars, and I'm not exactly sure, and I'm sorry I didn't check, but I'm pretty sure you can still see Mercury if you have a really good view of the horizon. So I'm going to stop there. Thank everyone for coming tonight, and we'll see you soon in person, I hope. I wish I was there tonight. Sorry.
Thank you, Denise. In a way, you're here and you're bigger than life.
Oh, geez. Yay.
This is part of our normal event cycle. And what we also do is have a normal feature by Dave Walker. Dave Walker does a little thing for us called Rocket Science. Dave, are you out there? Hello, Dave Walker. I see your screen. Well, you never know. Hope you didn't fall asleep. Last call, Dave Walker, coming in. Okay, well, I guess we're going to stop there for the live feed, everybody. What's interesting is doing this is that since we're live, we all get to continue on. We're going to take a look at our planetarium right here. Adam's going to give us a little view of the night sky. And we have had some questions recently that we'd like to answer. One of them that came up in our Astrocora forum was, which way does the galaxy rotate? So we might be able to figure that too. So if you want to be a member, you would have been invited to be here with us live, or you'd be with us on our Zoom feed. But I'd have to say, wait a second. I'm getting a contact from Dave Walker. And Dave, would you like to try it to finish us out tonight?
Yeah, Ted, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, then let's do this thing. My audio was acting funky. I had to back up. Okay, everybody. Whoa. Let's get rid of this Zoom screen here so you can see it.
Dave, we're not seeing your screen at all. We just see your name up on the screen. I don't see your face either.
Ted, is my sharing enabled?
You are shared.
Okay, here we go.
There we
It
go.
just gave me a warning. Here we go. Well, this week's report, I'm going to keep it short and sweet, is up, down, down, up, and kerblooey. Last Tuesday, the Crew Dragon Endeavour gave a beautiful view of people on the Gulf Coast of it re-entering for a 10:30 p.m. splashdown after a 6-month mission. And despite one of the 4 parachutes not fully inflating, Shane Kimbrough, Megan MacArthur of NASA, Thomas Pesquet of European Space Agency, and Ahikiko Hohishade of JAXA returned safely to Earth. This mission was actually supposed to launch before the current mission went up. Or sorry, this mission was supposed to come down when it did. The next mission, Crew Dragon 3 in Endurance, was supposed to launch several months ago, so they'd actually have 2 Dragons on the space station. It's still an accomplishment because SpaceX has managed to manage 2 different flights simultaneously. Endurance launched with Crew 3 on 10th of November, and a beautiful night launch with NASA astronauts Raja Chari, Tom Marshburn, Kayla Baran, and ESA mission specialist Matthias Maurer. And they're going to spend about 6 months on the ISS. And this will be the third private launch of astronauts to the space station. Again, it was going to be beautiful to have 2 Dragons at space station at the same time, but I think SpaceX has pulled off a remarkable feat. If anyone's been following anything about the news, who can tell me about the kerblooey? Russia launched an anti-satellite weapon on Wednesday, the 15th, from the Plesetsk Cosmodrome, destroying a 2-ton satellite named Cosmos 1418. It was an old Cold War surveillance satellite launched by the Soviet Union. It created a debris field of over 3,000 and counting trackable objects. Those are the ones that are above the size of a grapefruit, much less all the little bits that are much smaller. And they're orbiting the Earth 425 kilometers up every 93 minutes. This is just about 100 kilometers above the ISS. And the crew of the ISS, cosmonauts and astronauts alike, had to scuttle into their rescue spacecraft in case one of these bits hit it. It's caused a bit of an international incident. So it's going to be an interesting couple of years because it's going to take up to a decade for all the really dangerous bits to finally deorbit. Why they would choose to do that, there's a lot of speculation. No one has really done that at that high in orbit in a number of years. But I like to end on a high note. But first, one more low note. SLS has been delayed into 2025, Space Launch System. That's our big moon rocket, due to a number of delays, some technical, but right now mostly legal. Boy, you gotta love the law system in this country. Anyway, let's go to the high note. James Webb finally is on track. It's in its fairing. The fairing has been tested and approved for launch. And in a month and a day, it will launch from Kauru in French Guiana to study the universe in near infrared light, doing studies that really pick up from Spitzer, but at resolutions that make Hubble jealous. This is an artist's impression. I couldn't get any good pictures. Lots more space news, but this has been a great day of presentation. And as Dr. Savin pointed out and Adam pointed out, yeah, there is more to space flight than just rocket engineering, accounting, artistry, all sorts of things. So kids out there in the audience, find your path, find your way to space. And this is Dave Walker of the Rittenhouse saying, that's what's up.
Thanks,
Thank
Dave.
you, Dave. Well, ladies and gentlemen, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the live feed right now. So for those of you on our worldwide audience, I'd like to say goodbye to you. We're going to continue on here and have some fun right here in the planetarium and take a look at some of the amazing effects we have right here. So
I'd like to say goodbye to the international audience and take care.
Recording stop. Before Adam starts, everybody, thank you so much. This is pretty difficult for us in the back because we're dealing with 5 different feeds, and we're only discovering during this live that we're hearing each other at a 2-minute delay sometimes with our headphones. So thank you for participating in a bit of an experiment. Now we can all have some fun. Thank you. Now we can all have some fun. We came here to be in a planetarium, and Adam has a couple of things he'd like to line up for us. So I get to sit back and watch one of my students entertain. Go ahead, Adam. Take on over.
Welcome to those of you. My name's Adam Chantry. I'm the director of the planetarium here. I was so glad to have Rittenhouse Astronomical Site back here tonight where they're meeting. To have Shaun here. It's been years since Shaun and I have seen each other. We were a little bit separated at school, but we went to church together when we were younger, and it was really great to see some of the amazing things that he's doing out there to progress STEM education, which is something we focus on here at our planetarium. So we're going to give you just some highlights of the sky here, and then actually since it's so nice outside, we saw a telescope set up outside. We'll invite you, as you're walking out tonight, come take a look at the telescopes. We're going to take a look at a couple of the things. One of the things that I love to show here in the planetarium that not many people get to see and a lot of people don't get to understand, our planetarium does a pretty good job of simulating our nighttime sky. And the only thing that it doesn't simulate very well, if I get my remote here, not very remote. Oh, I have my good remote. There we go. Oh, wait, no. There we go. I grabbed the wrong remote. I have too many remotes for my remote. There you go. I have remotes for my remote. So here's our night sky as it looks from right here in Methacton. Not a bad sky. We can see quite a bit out there, but we don't see the sky as our ancient ancestors did, and as people even did 100 years ago. We deal with a lot of light pollution in this area. And this is one of the main things that I like to show all of our students here in Methacton who come through here, what an actual sky looks like. Because looking up at the sky outside, although it can be inspiring and it can get kids' minds thinking about what's out there, we don't see nearly what people have seen for a long time out there. So I turn off all of the local lights around us. Just to the southwest over there to your right is the King of Prussia Mall and the Valley Forge Casino. They kick up a whole lot of light. Even the city of Philadelphia, which is about 31 miles away to our southeast over there on the left, puts a big light dome in our sky. But here in the planetarium, we can flip the switch and we can turn off our views of that light pollution. And now we get a little bit of a better sense of what we can see in the sky. And we can also see a little bit of our Milky Way directly overhead here. It looks like almost a cloudy area right over our head, but that's actually the Milky Way. But this isn't a perfect view because just living on the East Coast, we are within a few hundred miles of cities like Boston, New York, Philadelphia, Baltimore, which all give off lots of light. This is still a light polluted sky. You really need to go out to the deserts of Arizona to get to a truly dark, perfect sky. And this is the part that lots of people hardly ever get to see. This is what a truly dark sky looks like. This is what humans saw over their heads at night for most of human history. It isn't until the past 100 years when we started putting light on everything that this got blocked out. This is what inspired our ancestors. So we can see the Milky Way galaxy spanning across our heads right now. This isn't clouds. It looks like clouds. And people say, oh, is that the gas and dust? And no, that's our Milky Way galaxy. So our star is just one, our sun is just one star. If you could sit here and count all of the stars in the sky, you might get 3,000 stars that you can count. Our galaxy has tens of millions up to hundreds of millions of stars in it. These 3,000 or 4,000 stars are just the 3,000 or 4,000 closest stars to us. The other few hundred million are so far away that they don't even show up as spots of light in our sky. They just show up as this glow that goes around us. Now, it looks like a rainbow going over our heads because of how it's positioned right now, but actually, it goes all the way around it. I explain it to our school children like, think about it like standing, being really small and standing in the middle of a pizza. And you might even have a little bit of cheese and pepperoni over your head. These stars would be the cheese and pepperoni over your head. And these stars down here would kind of be the crust that you're standing on. And as you look out from the center of the pizza, you can see the big, thick crust all around you. That's kind of what you're seeing here. And it would continue all the way down through the floor, all the way around us, and loop all the way around us because we're within the Milky Way Galaxy. Now, here in the sky tonight, you can see, as we saw, we have a lunar eclipse coming up later on this week, Thursday into Friday. I'm actually going to add in a little bit of the light pollution back to give you a more realistic view of what our sky would look like, because it can be a little confusing to see a perfectly dark sky. So this is more like what we would see out there. We're almost in the full moon phase, and for those of you astronomy students out there, the lunar eclipses can only happen at a full moon phase when we have a syzygy, or a alignment of three objects in the solar system, when the sun, the earth, and the moon line up just right for the earth to block the light going from the sun and reflecting back down to it. So we can see the almost full moon in the sky. As you came in, we saw some of the planets in our sky. They're getting much lower to the horizon now. They look just like stars. But we were looking at the planets Jupiter and Saturn out there. They're setting in our southwest now. Jupiter is very bright, stands out against all of the background stars as being very, very bright. I'll bring up Jupiter here. And down and to the right, or down into the west of Jupiter, is the planet Saturn. And probably by the time we're up on a hill here, so we might still just get it. You can see here in our football stadium, this is the football stadium at the high school. Saturn is just below the building. We tend to get it for a little bit longer here up on the hill. We might still get a quick glimpse of that in our nighttime sky. So another neat object that I like to point out this time of the year and this time of night, this is a great time of year where we transition from our summer constellations or stars that we see in the sky into our winter constellation. The summer constellations are marked out by a large triangle of stars that we can see over there in the west. If you look over to the west where the stars are setting, there's three bright stars that make up a large triangle that almost look like a piece of pizza or an ice cream cone. And if I can pull these up here, let's see. Let's disappear it a little bit. There we go. Let's see if we can bring up the summer triangle over here. So this is what we call the summer triangle. These are the stars and the constellations that we see most of the time during the summer months. And as it's getting colder, that summer triangle starts to set earlier and earlier and earlier. And we have another basic shape right over our head, the great square of Pegasus. So the square of Pegasus sits right overhead this time of night. And it's just a basic shape. We use these with our elementary students who come in here. Some of the constellations can be very hard to pick out, imagine. If you don't know what they are, everybody can find a square or a triangle in the sky. Now, in the winter months, we also have the winter triangle, which is just starting to rise. We get a little bit of it here in our sky. Let's see if I can get my winter triangle up here. I don't have my winter triangle slide pulled out yet, but just over in our eastern sky is our set of winter constellations that will be coming up. Here's the V-shaped Taurus, the bull, right over here. So these are some objects that we can see in the sky just with our eyes when we walk out. Tonight we'll have telescope pointed at the moon. Now when the moon's this full, it's really difficult to look at with a telescope because telescopes take a whole bunch of light and focus it right into your eye. When you point it at something as bright as the full moon and you look at it through an eyepiece, it actually hurts your eye. Gathering so much light, it's almost like staring right into a flashlight. So we have a special filter on that eyepiece that filters out a lot of the brighter light, so it looks a little bit dimmer, and you can see a little bit more detail on it. We'll also have a telescope pointing at the planet Jupiter. We should still be able to get that there. And then, Ted, what kind of deep sky object? It's a little bright out. Typically, deep sky objects, things you look at with the telescope that you can't see with your eye, are a little bit harder to see. But there are some brighter objects here. And one that I'm probably going to try to find in a telescope because it's spotted almost right over our heads right now. And that's going to be, we saw the Milky Way Galaxy, which is the galaxy which we live in. But right around where Ken is pointing there, there's a little fuzzy spot of light. So let me see if I can bring it up here on my list.
Can you guys see it in the audience? Try a little averted vision because it works in here. Look at this star here and kind of think about that area. And what you're really looking for is an ever so slight change of light right there. This is an object you can catch with the naked eye, especially out here in the Methacton School District on a clear, dark night. And did you tell them what it was?
No, I didn't tell them what it was. So we looked at our galaxy, which is the up to a few 100 million stars that surround us. But right around in this area is an entire another galaxy of stars.
You guys see it? Even my pointer makes it a little bit too bright. There you go. And what's kind of neat is that's about how you see it in the sky. You can barely tell that you're looking at it, but there it is. That's another galaxy.
And as we here with the planetarium now, we can really zoom in. There we go. You would never, now we always have to give this disclaimer with our students when we come in here, you're not going to see this in the telescope. We were not able to pass directly into the Hubble Space Telescope that might get an image, you know, kind of close to this with many hours of observation. We're just going to see a little fuzzy spot. Now, when I show it to students, they see this little fuzzy blurry spot and they're like, oh, that's just a blurry spot. And it is just a blurry spot. It's not very impressive to look at, but it's impressive to think about. That galaxy is 2.4 million light years away. So a light year is the distance that light will travel in a vacuum for an entire year. So light travels at 186,000 miles per second. That's per second, not per hour. We measure cars in per hour. 186,000 miles per second. So you take 186,000 miles, you multiply that by 60, you get a light minute. You multiply that by another 60, you get a light hour. You multiply that by 24, you get a light day. You multiply that by about 365, and you get a light year. It comes out to about 6 trillion miles. Light will travel about 6 trillion miles in a year. This is 2.4 million light years away. Little photons, the light-carrying particles that came off of those stars, left that galaxy 2.4 million years ago and traveled across space and time for 2.4 million years. Came down through this little telescope in my backyard, hit the mirror in the bottom of it, bounced back up and hit you in the eye so you could see this object. You're looking back in time 2.4 million years.
So before we just do a history lesson in here tonight, what I thought I'd also do is there's a couple other objects in here that you might not recognize. This is another galaxy you're seeing off there in the distance, and this is a third galaxy. When I do my talks out in Wyoming, we like to call this a three-for, a triple view. What's really good when you're doing astronomy is to be able to show people two sites together at one time. And this one never lets us down out west because there's 3 galaxies that are in that view. This one is also a spiral galaxy, small elliptical galaxy. And one of the things that always amazed me about Andromeda is how we learned about our galaxy. If you think about it, when you live in a house, if you never went outside the house, you wouldn't really know how it looked. So when you look out the window and you look at your neighbor's house and you see it has a garage and a door and windows, we decided when we were studying Andromeda, this might give us more ideas of what our galaxy was about. And one of the things we noticed the most in Andromeda are those dust bands that are right there. You can see them in a small telescope, especially out west. Oh, by the way, I got to add to your list, instead of the desert, you can also go to South Dakota, Midland, South Dakota, middle of our country, pitch black, best skies I've ever seen out there. And yeah, you can actually see these in scopes. You can see these dust bands. I used to tell my students it's kind of like an area of the galaxy that's under construction. That's the dust and gas that hasn't formed stars at that point. So I do have a good object, and I don't know if you want to end on it or if you want to just go further.
No,
So
let's go.
Adam was kind of getting to me. What would you want to point out? What would you say? Let's back out for a second, and I want to do one that I've been doing some photographic work on. It's so easy. The Great Double Cluster in Perseus.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Okay, so if you're looking at it in your database, it might be Chi Persei. I don't know, but how you put it in there. But I'll get the audience ready for it. Don't show us yet. So there's a great square of Pegasus right about there. And I don't know if you can find Andromeda again. It's right here. And you might wonder, well, how's he doing that? I'm kind of cheating a little bit. I'm using Queen Cassiopeia. See the big W that's right about here? One side of the W looks like it's kind of flattened. The other side of the W is a little equilateral triangle. It's a giant arrowhead. It points right to the Andromeda Galaxy in the sky. So if you can't find the square of Pegasus, you can't find Andromeda, this is pretty easy. The giant W, and if any of your students had me in school a long time ago, we flip it around and call it the big M for Methacton up there in the sky. So try to use that as your guide, and that will find it. So you find it in the database, because I'm going to try to find it first on my own. I can see it in here. Okay, so hold on. Well, I get surprised myself too, everybody. So here's Perseus right about here. Okay, here's Cassiopeia right about here. Try to look between them. Go about halfway, a little bit closer to the Perseus side. So I'm going to guess the little bit of bubble of light that I'm looking at is right around here. Am I accurate there, Adam? The double cluster? Yeah, let's zoom in on that one and see.
Okay.
And again, remember, I have this big thing about showing you more than one view of the telescope. Remember, Andromeda was a 3-for-1? Well, this is a 2-for-1. This is the only area in the sky that you can actually see 2 open clusters of stars side by side and both inside a telescope. And they're a beautiful, stunning view of the scope itself. So there it is, 2 clusters of stars. Now, most people look inside the clusters and they say, well, they both look pretty much the same to me. I can tell they're not really observing it too well, because can you tell there's some more red stars in one of the clusters than the other? If you look down at the bottom, we have a couple bright red fiery stars. Those are our coolest stars. A couple blue ones in here and then white ones. And it gives the illusion that they're actually pretty close to each other. In reality, it's more like looking down a field of view. They're actually fairly far apart, but the distance we can't really detect, because we're talking about distance outward from Earth and from in here. This is probably one of the favorite views that I show in the telescope. Those of you who are doing astrophotography, and it really is coming about now. It's hard to get a camera because so many people are doing this from their backyard. I'd highly recommend, if you've never done a picture of a deep space object, try this one. You get some amazing results out of this, and some stuff you can be proud of also. Okay, back out in there. And I don't know if you want to do another one, but I think I'm okay there.
Yeah, I think that's a good place.
I don't want to waste the time with you guys, because we do have a telescope and we'd like to show you some stuff outside also. I mean, we could go all night picking out deep space objects in here. But what you did see is you saw a galaxy. And you can also say that when you saw these open clusters, they're probably the basic building block of the Milky Way. Clusters only come as globular clusters and open clusters. And open clusters are very similar to the cluster that our star formed out of quite a long time ago. So, what a night, everybody. I know this is, for me, is amazing, but, to have my own students, working with me this way, and then to be able to come back to see you guys from Arcadia. All I'll say is excellent university. I had to work for my grades at Arcadia. Not like Temple. That's all I'll say. You pay your money, you got your degree. But no, Arcadia was the biggest challenge I had. I was actually through your computer science program at the time, and I was really impressed by the university. So you guys and ladies, you made a good choice. And I've worked with Kim for years. I don't think she's going to steer you wrong, especially in a class so long. So thanks to Shaun, and thanks to Adam. Thanks for Renee working in the background, making all the things, because she's going to put the notices together and have the stuff about the background for us, so we appreciate that also. Come on, hang a little bit with us. Come on outside. I'd rather take a pointer outside and point some stuff up in the sky to you there, and you can also take a look at some telescopes. So again, thanks for working with us. This is a dream come true for us. And we were actually kind of glad a lot of people didn't come out. So I was like, it's better to have a small group so we can, enjoy your company here. I think we had up to about 40 on there on Zoom at one time. So that was pretty good. And who knows, if you want to go home and try to look at it on YouTube, it'll stay there. And it's on the Rittenhouse side. So hey, Arcadia in the house, thank you very much. Thanks to my students for doing this. Thanks for coming out, everybody, making one of my dreams come true. Take care. Let's go outside.
Good night, everybody.
I was here, but now
Did you ever get out here? No. Okay, you gotta find your way out here and everything. Yeah.
literally right across the street from his parents, the State College. We're really good friends.
Let me go outside for a little.
Yeah.
I ended up in there.
Yeah, like I've always said to him, by your window, I'd be close.
Guys, the telescopes are right outside the door to the left. Just take a quick look.
Okay, we're here.
How many of you were there? I know there was
I know there were more behind us.
I think one of them brought his brothers out.
Oh,
So three?
So
five.
okay. Just shoot me an email that you were here.
Okay, thank you.
I think I'll remember. I have going away. And then followed up there. And that was just the kind of, as I went to high school, somebody who I knew, like I literally pushed on people like, anyone know the astronauts?
Oh, you don't.
There you go.
It's just, I mean, it's just State College, so. Like, he's been, I mean, this is the kind of guy like who, because the people who down had a baby, you just relayed their stones, walk away for them, like while they were doing the baby, like, so he's like, he's a go-getter, like, he's just
Right. Right. That's all.
I know what. So it means if there was something specific you wanted to do, I mean, Zoom is everywhere.
Right. Yeah, I mean, personally, yes, I will reach out to everybody. I just wish more like mass emails there was, because I know planetarians have to go really discuss it.
I definitely can't pronounce it.
So is he from University First?
No. The Rex bio on this, you got him with this.
No, but of course.
All over. I mean, he lives in the coast now.
Right. I have a really good connection to the astronomy professor at the State College.
Buffalo, New York.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, we Upper Dublin literally applied for a vote 4 years ago. There you go. 4 years ago, they agreed to have it. We're not going to build it. That's the big barely, like it was a no for later when it's worth the machine.
Yeah.
That was it. You said that's the out. So definitely, we're not gonna be ready for September, so and so 4 months to figure everything out. But they were so I mean, I would love to. I don't know. There's definitely in that community that probably fall in from behind the scenes, like more up to date, in touch, live feed, social media, like more of like what is going on and where, communication and this old fashioned theater. Because that's like a lot of people think about it. Like, well, and I had to remember to tell them we can put this on the computer. We download that app and I was like, oh, why? Mind you, not one single school board member ever came to Planetarium. Not one, but they all voted on whether or not to build one. Like, so that you have no idea what I do, and you're voting on it. That's awesome. That's why I wanted to come over and say hi to you, because I was like, well, where does she work? I'm like, who is she? So like, Arcadie's interesting. The fact that you're a planetarium director at a high school or middle school, or I mean, this is ridiculous that middle school, but high school, right? No, it's in our middle school. Oh, it's in your middle school. So my degree is master of physics.
I did not make it. That was my first year I went for. And I hit like theoretical math myself.
Somehow I mastered math, but I did that, and then I came back and I started teaching physics at the high school, and I was like, after like 6 months of taking on certificate, knowing they answered every equation, but this time I've done it today, I'm like, I cannot do this. And then I worked at a national fellowship grad school in Indiana, so I had a free ride for my master's, and when I came back, you're just a little smart. Well, like my Arcadius plus speaker doing cosmology, like the universe, like, and they were like, you're too smart to be in this room with us. And I was like, I can't spell words. Like, literally, like, don't give me a word more than 4 letters, because I don't know. Thank God for spell correct. But yeah. So I mean, physics is I'm always but yeah. So and then in 2001, our planetarium director left the keys. She got sick with our school board and left and walked out. And took the keys, like, to operate the facility. No. And our school board was like, does anyone run a planetarium? And I was like, well, I did in grad school, but no, she's like, I can't run this planetarium. I would need like 2 months to figure it out. Like, they're not the same. So they're like, it's yours. Final locksmith. You sound. I call it the same company that they use here. And they're not attached for it, which is close. But it's literally for like, I'd say 2 years. I pressed that. Okay, that did nothing. And then I would follow, get a stack of dates for everything that's wired, through the diagonal follow. Well, let me get your picture for a second. So, sure. So you teach here? Yeah, at high school, but yes, in the district. Okay. Biology and environmental science. Okay. You like the eye thing? Those tricky organoids. It's so funny. So it was I was like, we were doing geologic time school, and one of the kids had like really, I don't know, I guess it hit him, had talked about how trilobites are the first things that had eyes, and how, and he was like really into it. And so when he said that, it was like, the new trilobites. I think Ted and I have always been this way. Like, when I first started back in 2001, like, we had tested us and North Penn and Centennial, and we would meet like once a year just to support each other. There's no one else. It's been my school district. So it was nice to have like someone else to do. It's so sad, like what's happened.
Have a conversation over like
Well, it's just the functionality and then the complaining, what's happening here with him not being working right now because they need a teacher, so they just know how to like. I'm kind of small. When I said I'm 5'10", so you're totally wrong. It's like, you're not small. Like, yes. I'm like, hey, you point that out. No one's ever thought that before.
They're still there and they're watching. They're getting to see.
Go on, you can.
They get to see Jupiter out there, the moon out there, the double
Can you see
cluster.
moons in Jupiter or no?
Yeah. So the scope on the right, the Dob is on Jupiter. Dan's out there right now. We're gonna take a picture real quick, and we'll come out.
Yeah, I'm gonna get a picture of that.
Okay. Yeah, tell your students if they want to come in here to take the picture, you can.
All right. I think in the. Let's get it.
Okay.
I work with Cheryl.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Yeah. Christine one, during my tenure here, she's an amazing science teacher. But she's doing environmental now?
Biology environmental, yeah.
Okay. So there's no way to work a field trip with
See that?
Okay. So how is the environmental take place? Just know that I was the first at the other end. We have two observatories to explore. This right today, probably got some solar doing. I'm sitting in something called a solar hall. Giant walkway with all these amazing pictures. So I can actually do a 20-minute talk there. And we can have a breakout room where we can do astronomy lessons during the day. But I was thinking of cool to have the last trip come out to it. We should add something else in language here. Maybe a half day, that'd be another half day. And then after we come back on the weekend, just throw the idea out.
I would sound first.
Yeah,
I got it. There's no way. I was like,
that's why I say you come out during the day, you can actually do that. You don't do it with other field trips, but you can bring it to the field trip. And then schedule time, you say, hey, you can come back on your own wall, you're on certain night. Just think about it, throw the idea out, you kind of grow with it. I wouldn't mind working with you, Chris. I enjoyed it when I was here.
Thank you, Heather.
Don't do it again
Oh,
now.
I need your picture.
Okay.
I'm
Good
gonna
boy.
give you.
All take a thorough count. Like be good.
Yeah, it's.
Be brighter.
I think take a look. I'm not familiar with the way it's different. I think it looks good. You can see your faces, but it still has kind of like a.
The color of the dome. Yeah, you're in that.
Well, that's what your eyes. It looks like one of the other ones. Yeah, that's one.
Yeah, he was right. I was very good scientific. You could hear his enthusiasm coming through. And I just thought, this is the perfect one. So that's the challenge. Yeah, even in a public setting, break things down, calm it down. Yeah, make sure it's, calm it down. Or, definitely one of your stuff. Yeah. You're gonna want more pictures. Yeah. They all do. I get a lot.
Thank you guys so much for doing this. This was amazing.
Yeah.
But just to note, like this is the highest attended Rittenhouse meeting is probably like 500 years. Because if you count the pool books, like 40 people on the tube, another what, 20 people here.
Right.
Like when was the last time we were at the Franklin? And got 50 people.
Yeah.
So if you think about it that way.
They put us on the deadest side of the week.
Yeah.
They moved us to a Monday night, and nobody rent the building on a Monday night.
Yeah.
We watched our attendance go right down.
I mean, we get 40. Well, we would get more. We really would get more than that. Monday night, so.
So we were with the giant planetarium, 300 with 40 people. So we were
But it was good.
Yeah, scary things that happen, you know, going into COVID and all the nonsense that's going on. All right. So yeah, I have members who will not go down. Well, I must be able to. Yeah, by the way, our treasurer. Yeah, actually does the treasury group, and he's been with us since he was 18. Wow, so for that. 15. Started at 15, he's in 30. So some reason people seem to hang long term. Huh? Come on, let's go. Yeah, I think that's everything. Thanks. Yeah, no, your card, and I'm like, oh my gosh. So yeah, that was kind of neat for me. And yeah, when you get your planetarium together, have us out. Let's do the same thing. And PR doing the how great this is that your district is supporting stuff. Blah 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 blah.
Well, we now have a student coordinator. So
yeah, Daniel has one. That's another teacher that has a.
So this is he's an
reduced
admin.
roster. Okay. Oh, so he doesn't do a classroom.
But he's K-12 now.
Okay. Okay. Now, do you do? Are you running? You're not doing anything with planetarium right now.
No, I am.
Right? Okay. So it is open in the old building.
In the old building, and then we get the new building in September. I don't know the details of when stuff is being put in, when the projector, when the
Will you start going to conferences again?
I want
I noticed there's 2 physical conferences.
Where
one
are
in Maine. I just got a
Mass.
paper copy of it. One's in Maine, Mass, and there's a conjunction conference in Tennessee.
I mean, it would make sense the new facility to send me. I mean, honestly, by the time you're at the conference, we'll already have all this stuff selected.
Well, you tell me if you're looking for new ideas for
Right,
the conference,
software.
for the new facility.
Right.
New ideas for the new facility.
Yeah. I think I could probably pick the Maine. I don't know if they'll fly me anywhere. I went to the same place in Maine, Portland again.
I think so.
We were there.
I don't think it's
Years ago.
Portland. It's Allen's old facility. It's another place. Not the same one, but it's right near Portland.
Right. I drove there. I remember.
I took the train up. I think I took the train to Portland and
Right.
out that over to the hotel. But I don't think it's in Center City, Portland. The other one was in the
Right.
downtown area.
Yeah.
A little further out. Come on, I'll walk out with you.
All right. Thank you for the
Thank you. Well, no, thanks for coming over because it's like, where am I now?
Yeah. I'm glad that
As Renee said.
oh, we need like a stage, we need some like visual, like, oh, but I don't think we need it. I thought Savin was entertaining enough. Oh, yeah, you really like how he was. I thought, okay, it's not, I don't know, dodging your head. Yeah, I always worry about sometimes these scientists, they're just there, and they just kind of, feeling of that. Not long ago, I told you the kids already said, oh, we'll see open our center. Come out, close the front, say how great we are. So when you say your shows are selling out, tell me something. Do you think it's the fact that families are just the community? It's definitely the community. I mean, every show that I've had, I had in the show, well, people. That had never been here before. That were, oh, because that was something I never get out of anything. Oh yeah, maybe one or two teachers on every one, but never. I always thought, where's our own staff? Definitely not staff.